expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee and Cloud Native, the show that shares news and interesting content related to Kubernetes, Cloud Native, and other nifty technology. My name is Adrian Goins, and I'm pumped to be here with you today. If you're watching live, cool. Consider following or subscribing to the channel. If you're watching a replay, then please also give the video a thumbs up so that the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. I'm not getting, hang on. I forgot. Nope. Yes. New buttons, doing new things. You didn't get to see my title. I have a title today. It's actually the right title. Wait, it's over there. There you go. So anyway, that's my name, that's my title. I'm gonna have to automate that. It's another button that I forgot to push. And so then we've also got this little subscribe thing that tells you that you should do that. Live chat happens in Discord with a bot that relays between YouTube and Twitch, so come hang out with us either during the show or after. And as you'll see in a moment, the chat is where things happen. I don't currently have the little scrolly thing across the bottom of the screen, so you'll just have to get the links from the video description. Who do we have with us here this morning? Whoa, we got lots of people. Old Man with a Hat, Chrysalis, Stat Clash, Ariel, Wifebot, of course. Hello, Wifebot. Thank you for joining us today. Nuno. Who else did I see here? Peter Keach, Ian, RestreamBot. Saying that from YouTube, we've got Noel and Danny. Thank you for joining us. James P. Wojtek. The nice crazy bear saying hello. Steve G. Hello, sir. It's always nice to see you. Leffen. We're getting back to the part of the people who show up for class early. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining. If I didn't say your name, I still appreciate that you're here. We just have a lot of stuff to cover today. We don't actually have any news today, so we can get right into... So the collector bots have gathered candidates for the show, and Trufflebot has scored them from 1 to 5 coffees. He'll post them one at a time in Discord. Anyone watching live can rate them. Your votes are used to train the machine learning model that chooses content for the show. So get in there and vote. I don't yet have a button that does all of these things automatically for me. I have to come over here, and I have to type AB next. And, Flatcar Container Linux. This is where CoreOS went when Red Hat killed the original CoreOS. Even though there's technically Fedora CoreOS, it's not really the same thing. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but it's not. But Flatcar Container Linux is. So this is by Kinvolk. Yeah, so this is now officially maintained by Kinvolk, and it's just CoreOS. So it's a container Linux platform, but it's got some new great stuff coming. It's funny, I miss Rocket. I had somebody come up to me the other day and they're like, so was Rocket, does Rancher run on Rocket? I'm like, Rocket's not around, dude. Rocket's not here, man. This article gives a good overview of what you get with Flatcar Container Linux, which has some great stuff in it. For example, the upcoming version will support Containerd as well as Docker Engine. Everybody's getting on board that train. It doesn't have a package manager. Everything happens with systemd and ignition. So the systemd unit files form the building block of the operating system, and every process, even if it's short-lived, is packaged and deployed as a unit. Not totally sure how I feel about that, but apparently it works. You can control everything with systemctl. I know, system control. I don't know why I like saying CTL. It's for the same reason I like saying MariaDB instead of MariaDB. I don't know, just CTL. Okay, fine, system control. And so everything is configured via ignition, and then this becomes your operating system on top of which you can put something wonderful like K3s or microK8s if you're into that. And then because it's designed for all control happening via other means, you don't ever SSH into the node. So this can be a good start for immutable infrastructure in the sense that you can just, you don't ever SSH into it. You don't ever do anything on it. So I don't know, I haven't used it. I'm not sure how upgrades and things happen, but it all happens remotely. So you can pixie boot this thing, and Janakiram MSV will have additional articles upcoming on how to actually get started using Flatcar Container Linux. This article talks about a not new security vulnerability, but it is an article that just came out a couple of days ago. And the point that they want to make is that you can block these kinds of things using policy within your Kubernetes cluster. This is from Accurix, who make Terrascan, and of course, they're talking about how you can use their tool, which piggybacks on top of OPA, to do this, but they give specific examples of how you would configure this with OPA. And then, of course, if you're using something like Kyverno, you can just do the same thing with Kyverno. When you see CVEs come out, consider whether you can solve them with the tools that you already have, or if you wish, restrict your workloads. It's more work, and eventually you'll find yourself restricting workloads in a way that you're like, I need this, and so then you can make exceptions. But if you want to go the lock everything down and then permit stuff route, you'll be less susceptible to things. I run my own clusters for myself, so I prefer to go the easy route of, well, just letting things do what they need to do and then coming in and patching stuff as is necessary. But here you go, easy article. If you're running OPA, you can probably just copy and paste this stuff right from there. I'll put down my stylus. Yesterday we talked about Ansible. And I said that I use Ansible, sort of, sometimes, but I don't use Ansible for anything with Kubernetes. Well, this is an old article. I love the stuff that came out in January of 2020 because I'm like, really? January 14th, but it's only January 12th. Oh, it's not 2020 anymore. Regardless, this is some timeless information from Jeff Geerling about where Ansible can fit in an environment that's running Kubernetes. Ansible is good for container build, cluster management, and application lifecycle, and there is an intersection of those items. Thank you, WifeBot. I will try to remember that. There's an intersection of those items, and the article goes on to talk about stuff related to how Ansible can do stuff with the cluster. So, for example, it says that we can do better than dealing with indecipherable Docker files like this. I personally don't mind indecipherable Docker files because they tend to be on things where I don't need to be deciphering them. And when I do need to decipher them, I understand what they're saying. But I'm not everybody, and this is from PHP. I know you can't see it. That's okay, just trust me, it's indecipherable. Well, Jeff says, Ansible can build and manage containers using Docker files, but it can also just build container images directly and can give you a better interface to how your containers are built. And then can work with, Builda that integrates with Ansible Container Build Tool, Ansible Bender, what a crazy name for it, to build containers using more expressive and maintainable Ansible playbooks. Now, all you're doing is trading one thing for another, but if you already work with Ansible, then maybe you're trading two things for one, and that might be beneficial. What else? Ansible offers useful abstractions like managing CloudFormation template deployments on AWS with the CloudFormation module, or Terraform deployments with the Terraform module. I don't know that I want to be using Ansible to build Terraform modules, but again, if I have everything inside of Ansible and I'm branching out to different tools, then that might be better. Better than the alternative. And then, of course, you can also manage Kubernetes applications directly. If you want to work with operators, Ansible, being Red Hat and operator-y and stuff like that, does interface with operators via the operator SDK, which can allow your developers to build operators using YAML and not by using Go. Maybe that's also good. There's some other stuff in here that talks about where Ansible can fit in a Kubernetes environment. It has a place. Nope, I didn't vote on that. And the community voted that 4 coffees. Next up. For all y'all Windows peeps out there doing your Kuberneteses and your Windowses. I try to include content for Windows, even though I do nothing with Windows. So you'll see some .NET Core stuff, you see Azure things. We've had this, the earlier part of this article from Yeti Ops on, where he was talking about how to build a mixed Linux and Windows cluster using Packer, Terraform, Ansible, hey, theme of the day, and KVM. And this talks about running applications. First of all, if you've been following along with his articles, oops, he made a mistake. So there's a fix for that. The biggest part of why I wanted to include this is it introduces runtime classes. If you're working in a hybrid environment with Windows nodes and Linux nodes, then you have one of them or the other tainted such that if you don't, then Kubernetes doesn't know that one is different from the other, and it might try to deploy a Windows workload onto a Linux node or the other way around, and then all hell breaks loose. So you can taint the nodes and then put tolerations into your deployments. But like all things, that can end up where you're duplicating lots of stuff. If you have lots of deployments, then you have the same code with the same tolerations in every single deployment or stateful set or whatever. So Kubernetes recognized this and they introduced the runtime class, which allows you to put all of your toleration into a runtime class and then add this onto your deployments with just a single line. So now you can just say this deployment tolerates, use the runtime class Windows 2019, and all of the toleration stuff will be pulled into that. Way better solution, way better. The rest of it is, well, how to do stuff with hybrid environments. Community voted that one 4 coffees. Apparently GitHub had a conference. Who knew? If you missed it, Dimitris has given us a nice summary of what's going on. And the article caught my attention because it says, this is, the things that you should keep from GitHub Universe. And I thought, oh, like GitHub Universe, is that like a new product? And should I hold stuff out of it? Because like the new GitHub is here. Is it bad? No. What he means is if you miss the conference, these are the most valuable tidbits from it. And that's what the article goes on to talk about. There's some interesting new things that are worth pointing out. So for example, open source community discussions are now in beta, so anybody can use those. And it includes a feature for converting discussions to GitHub issues. So if you don't have a community environment, you can open up discussions around your project, which is basically, I don't know, like an embedded Slack or something. And then from those discussions, you can be like, make me an issue. That's a cool feature, less work. They have GitHub CLI. Now you can do all sorts of stuff on the command line. So you can make pull requests, you can annotate, you can edit, you can create gists. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff with the CLI now. Less context switching, more productivity. They have a dependency review tool baked into pull requests. So if your PR has a bunch of dependencies, it'll do a security analysis of those dependencies and tell you, or, and then of course, as we've seen for a while, GitHub sponsors exists. If you are the maintainer of a project, companies who use the project or people who use the project can sponsor you for it. And the idea behind GitHub sponsors is for companies who already pay GitHub stuff for their environment, GitHub Enterprise or whatever. And so it just runs through the same billing cycle, making it easier for companies to be like, oh yeah, we'd like to support product XYZ. If you're on the opposite side of this, we have certainly seen that sponsored projects, well, if you're on the opposite side of this, just remember that the people who sponsor you don't have to. And help them feel appreciated. Like, they don't have to give you anything. They can still use your stuff for free. So when they do, give them a shout out, make them feel appreciated. Don't just cry that you want more money. GitHub Actions. We've been seeing a lot of stuff coming out around GitHub Actions. So there's the Actions Marketplace, there's their CI/CD solution, and people are building things that plug it into everything. So if you use GitHub, definitely check out Actions. Oh, and apparently there's a dark theme. Yay! Y'all rated that 4 coffees. Engine Yard Kontainers is now live. When I first saw this, I was like, really? Didn't Engine Yard go out of business? No, apparently they didn't. Microsoft bought Deis, and then Crossover Crossover, I think, bought Engine Yard and just kept the name. Maybe they were going to go out of business if they didn't get bought. I don't know. Regardless, they're still around. It's still called Engine Yard, and they have a container solution. This, they claim to be leading the shift to the no-ops paradigm. I'm tired of things having ops appended to them. This is Coffee Ops. Welcome to Coffee Ops. Okay. First of all, their product is now available. You can sign up for it. You get a $200 credit that you can use for 30 days. But let's consider what no ops is. Let's go to pricing. The idea is that no ops means you can deploy your stuff and you don't need any operations people or tier. I, as an operator, get offended by that because what it actually means is you are abdicating responsibility for that to somebody else and hoping that they don't screw it up. Nothing against Engine Yard. I'm sure that with all of their experience, they're going to do super fine and so on and so forth. But let's consider that it's a trade. So you're either not paying for somebody in-house, but you're paying for something externally. That's fine for a while. Maybe it's fine forever. If you want to go somewhere else, then you still have a problem you have to solve. How do you extract that knowledge back and put it somewhere where you don't screw up your application or screw up your company? Their pricing model is interesting. They're priced for optimized container units. So that's a container that uses 1 GB of RAM and a proportionate CPU, whatever the heck proportionate means. And that's $50 a month. Okay. Plus a minimum $800 per month per private cluster, prorated to the hour. Their pricing appears to be the minimum of that. So if you use less OCUs than that, that's what you're going to pay. If you use more OCUs than that, then they bill 20% of container usage. That seems a little hand-wavy. And that's for private clusters. Then they have Engine Yard Cloud, which is equivalent to AWS EC2 pricing. I think this is probably going to get really expensive really fast, but it might still cost less than employing somebody like me. Not that I like that. Do note that down here we have a very small piece of print that says, incidental charges such as traffic fees, S3, or other AWS resources will be billed as actual. Traffic's not an incidental charge, but okay, don't be surprised when that comes across. And then looking at... There was one other thing in here that I wanted to call attention to, just in the context of watch out. And it was, they said that they have a combined 20 years of database as a service experience. I don't think this is a small company. That technically could mean that they have 20 people, each with 1 year of experience. So watch out for the combined years of experience thing, because it doesn't actually mean anything. I don't like no-ops. I don't like the idea that you throw all of your stuff away into a platform and hope that it works. But that's me. I'm not going to buy it. Lots and lots and lots of other people do and will and need to, because solutions like this have a place for enterprises who are building applications and have developers and spend their money on their app and don't need to spend their money on operations. So, UIK sits on top of AWS. And you guys rated it 3 coffees. I should have stopped talking about that a long time ago. Next. I wanted to ask a question, and I'm going to jump back over to the live chat channel here so that you guys can respond, and I can actually see your responses. I want to know what labels, well, specifically, these are the recommended labels from Kubernetes. And so app.kubernetes.io/name is the one that I want to ask about. I see that like if you just create a deployment, it creates app foo. Do you settle for that? Or do you also go back and add app.kubernetes.io/name and then name it the same as the app or name it the same as the name? Because to me, that seems like duplication of effort. But like these are the recommended labels. So you'll see that things deployed via Helm charts add this and don't add the other. Do you go back and add the other? Just let me know in the chat what you do. Captain Justin says we use name, but that might be wrong. Brendan says just use app. I set up a policy for Kyverno to make sure that I have one or the other. Shipwreck says no. Okay. Shipwreck doesn't use anything. Ian says no. Okay, well, so those of you who just aren't using labels, all right, Frank's using app, but also using app. Okay. So I don't, like if I build it, I might use this, I might use just app, but like I said, Kyverno just checks to make sure that one of them is deployed and then complains if it's not. I don't use any of the rest of these, though I do see that they're obviously appropriate, and Helm charts will add them. So for example, the idea that the name is the name of the app, but the instance might be the specific instance of the app, because there could be multiple MySQL deployments or whatever app deployments within a Kubernetes cluster. Version, that seems like that's going to be really hard to track manually. Helm can probably just do that for you. Component, sure. Part of, that also seems like that's going to be a pain in the butt to track. And then managed by Helm. Kubernetes, recommended labels, ladies and gentlemen. Use some of them. You guys rated that 4 copies. This next one is one of those things to keep your eye on. The link actually takes you to part 18. But let's jump back to part 1, which wasn't that long ago. It was on December 25th. This individual decided that his New Year's resolution for 2021 is to teach as many people about Git as possible. That's a cool New Year's resolution, but he wants to do it by building a game that someone can play. Gamification of education is a fantastic way to teach things to people. He has no idea how he's going to do it, so as he's going through this entire process, from design to the development to the architecture solutions, he's documenting everything. So you can follow along with his thought process and why he's making certain decisions, as well as follow along with the building of the application. He starts out by saying, I have no idea if I'll be able to do this in 2021. You know, it seems like a good project, but many of my projects end in failure. That I like that he recognized that. There's not a reason to stop doing projects. Continue doing projects. Lots of things end in failure, and some things end in success. If you do nothing, everything ends in failure. So the whole thing goes through design ideas, architecture decisions. He's putting it on Firebase, and so on. And then within what he's doing, you can also learn about plugging things into GitHub Actions with CI/CD, GitHub branching, Firebase, serverless, and so on. Y'all gave that 4 coffees. Aeraki is a new framework. Not really sure what to call it. It's a thing that allows Istio to manage any layer 7 traffic. Right now, Istio will do HTTP and gRPC. This sits on top of it and currently has support. Currently, I sound like a Skeksis. Dolphin. I guess that's Yoda. Yoda, Skeksis. Oh, I'm surprised somebody hasn't done that as a meme. Okay, so it sits on top of Istio and currently has support for Dubbo, which I've never heard of, Kafka, Thrift, and Zookeeper, but they are adding support for MySQL, and basically enables Istio to be aware of these protocols and do stuff with them. Now, it doesn't directly modify Istio. I thought I highlighted something in here. It doesn't directly modify Istio. Instead, it talks to the Envoy filter API and makes changes that way. So it doesn't change Istio, so therefore it sits above it. You can deploy it alongside anything. You don't have to worry about taking it out later and having stuff collapse, other than the MySQL routing that you're doing. You all gave that 4 coffees. All right, the last one for today's A/B test, and then we have to do the tool of the day, and I'm going to really try and remember to press the button. It's right there. I see it. I see you, button. I'm going to press you. This is ZenML, and I can do this very quickly because I know that only some of you care about machine learning. But those of you who do care about machine learning probably care about this. The objective of the ZenML project is to create reproducible ML pipelines. How they do that, I'm not going to get into, but I'll just read here that it's built to take your experiments all the way from data versioning to a deployed model. It replaces fragile glue code and one-off scripts to automate Jupyter notebooks and exchanges that for production-ready machine learning. No, I totally read that wrong. It replaces fragile glue code and scripts to automate Jupyter notebooks for production-ready machine learning. Reading is hard. The core design is centered around extensible interfaces to accommodate complex pipeline scenarios while providing a batteries-included, straightforward, happy path to achieve success in common use cases without unnecessary boilerplate code. They have a whole thing about the concepts, about how to get up and running and starting and so on and so forth. Currently supports TensorFlow, I think I saw. Yeah, so it currently only supports TensorFlow 2.3.0 based models, but they want to expand it to be library and dependency agnostic. If you're doing stuff, machine learning, check them out. Today's, let's see, y'all rated that 4 coffees, and today's show had an average rating of 4 coffees. I bet I can make the bot tell the YouTubers what it rated without having the emojis. Oh, I'm gonna press the button. I pressed the button. I'm so good at this. Today's tool of the day is kube-fledged. It's a Kubernetes add-on for creating and managing a cache of container images directly on the cluster worker nodes so that application pods start almost instantly. We've had something on the show in the past that does something similar. It like recognizes stuff that's deployed in the cluster and just automatically pulls all of the pods everywhere. This is not that. This is that plus intelligence. It creates an image cache. First of all, they have a cute logo. Look at that little bird. Peep, peep. It creates, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said. It creates, so it works with CRDs. It creates an image cache object inside of the Kubernetes cluster that you can use to configure what should and should not be cached. It doesn't just arbitrarily pull everything to every node. In their description, okay, use cases. Why would you want this? Applications that require rapid startup, cold start of serverless functions where you don't need to waste time pulling the container image down, IoT applications running on edge devices where network connectivity between the edge and the image registry is intermittent or otherwise just sucks. Or if a cluster administrator or operator needs to roll out upgrades to an application and wants to verify beforehand if the new images can be pulled successfully. That's a cool use case that I had not thought of before. Basic requirements and so on and so forth. And they have a design doc. I'll find that in a second because I found something else I highlighted. You can delete images from the cache. You can prime the cache. You can do all of this stuff because you're working with CRDs. And so you have a lot more configurability in how things happen. In fact, before you delete the image cache, you want to make sure that it purges the images. 2 caveats. 1, in their design proposal, they make the claim that other people have made that I disagree with, which is setting up and maintaining a local registry mirror consumes considerable computational and human resources. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And in fact, even if you deploy this, I still also strongly recommend that you set up a pull-through cache in your environment because it'll just make your life better. And it's not hard. So ignore that. The proposed solution is to have a distributed cluster image cache. To me, that means that the pool is actually like if something's on one node, then it doesn't need to be on all nodes. And I don't think that's what this does. So I think they're using the term distributed incorrectly. I think that it just means like it's just going to pull it to everything and it's configurable. The second caveat is that you will run up against kubelet purging images. If the kubelet garbage collection comes along and says, oh, I don't need these anymore, and nukes them, well, this thing is at least smart enough to detect that and pull them again. I wish that there was a way that you didn't have to be constantly fighting with the kubelet, but there's not. So it's better to at least recover from that than to be surprised by, oh crap, my images aren't there anymore. Or I don't know, any other alternative. So I think that's probably the best solution that we can come up with. Regardless, here you go, kube-fledged, a possibly distributed image cache of stuff. I can maybe plug this into BitTorrent. I don't know, that'd be kind of cool, right? So that like things are actually there. That's Uber has a container registry solution that's like torrent backed. Anyway, whatever. Let's get out of here. It's the end of the show. Oops. Let's end the tool of the day. Let's vote on the tool of the day. I'm never gonna leave. That's it. Tool of the day complete. All right, so the community rated that 5 coffees. That's nice. I'm glad you guys liked that. Let's get out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Everything that I talk about on the show goes up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Come join us. Community members get early access to the links, video replay, and other exclusive content. If you have something you would like me to consider for the show, post it in the community site or in the show suggestions channel in Discord. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning. I will see you in the next show. Stay caffeinative.